The twin suns of Helios and Demeter cast elongated shadows across Crimson Canyon, their harsh light illuminating dust particles that swirled in angry eddies around Aaliyah's face mask. The canyon stretched before her like an open wound on the planet's surface, its red stone walls rising hundreds of meters on either side. Her six-legged mount, Sable, moved with practiced ease across the treacherous terrain, each of its articulated limbs finding purchase on the shifting sands. The neural interface at the base of Aaliyah's skull pulsed with a soft blue glow, matching the bioluminescent nodes embedded in Sable's exoskeleton. Aaliyah squinted against the harsh light, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. 12 hover wagons followed behind her, their repulsor engines humming quietly as they navigated the uneven ground. The wagons carried precious cargo, crates of hybrid grain engineered by her mother before her death 3 months ago. The grain was resistant to the blight that had devastated crops across the settlements, and these seedlings represented hope for thousands. "How's it looking up there, Scout?" Kor's gravelly voice crackled through her comms. The caravan master was a cautious man, which was why he'd survived 30 years in the wastelands. "Clear for now," Aaliyah responded, her eyes never ceasing their vigilant sweep. "But the wind's picking up. We should reach shelter point before the dust storm hits." "Roger that. Kor says the engines are running hot. These new fusion cells aren't holding up like the old ones." Aaliyah nodded to herself. Kor's twin brother and chief engineer, was rarely wrong about such things. "Tell him to cycle down the rear wagons. We can run them at half power through the flats." As she gave the order, her mother's last words echoed in her mind. "Protect them when I can't." At the time, Aaliyah had thought she meant the seedlings, the culmination of her life's work. Now, she wondered if her mother had meant the settlements, the people, or perhaps something else entirely. The bioluminescent spear strapped to her back pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. A gift from her mother on her 18th birthday. Its crystalline tip housed a consciousness of sorts, a symbiotic organism that responded to her emotions and enhanced her reflexes. Right now, it sensed her unease and glowed a deep amber. Sable suddenly tensed beneath her, all 6 legs splaying wider in a defensive posture. The creature's sensory whiskers twitched frantically, detecting something Aaliyah couldn't yet perceive. "Kor, something's wrong," Aaliyah hissed into her comms. "Full alert." She unsheathed her spear in one fluid motion, the weapon extending to its full 2-meter length with a soft hiss. The canyon rim above them had appeared empty moments before, but now dark silhouettes appeared against the crimson sky. Raiders, at least 20 of them, armed with scavenged weapons and riding their own 6-legged mounts. "Forsaken!" she shouted, as the first volley of energy bolts streaked toward the caravan. "Defensive formation!" The hover wagons immediately shifted, forming a protective circle around the central cargo containers. Aaliyah urged Sable forward, the creature bounding up the canyon wall with impossible agility. Her spear glowed brilliant blue now, feeding off her surge of adrenaline as she prepared to meet the first raider. Their mounts collided in midair, Sable's superior strength knocking the smaller creature backward. Aaliyah's spear found its mark in the raider's shoulder, the crystalline tip discharging a pulse of energy that sent the attacker tumbling from his saddle. 3 more converged on her position, energy weapons crackling with unstable power. Aaliyah fought with the precision of someone who had survived 100 such encounters. The spear moved as an extension of her body, blocking, striking, parrying. 2 more raiders fell to her attacks, but they were organized this time, their tactics suggesting leadership beyond the typical Forsaken raiding party. A flash of movement caught her eye, a tall figure standing on the canyon rim, silhouetted against the dying light of Helios. Though his face was obscured by a rebreather mask, something about his stance made Aaliyah's blood run cold. It couldn't be. He was dead, 3 years dead. But even at this distance, she recognized the way he held himself, the set of his shoulders, the custom-made rifle in his hands. Victor, her captain, her mentor, the man who had abandoned them all to die in the ashen fields. The distraction nearly cost her life as an energy bolt grazed her shoulder, searing through her protective gear. Aaliyah hissed in pain, but recovered quickly, dispatching her attacker with a vicious thrust of her spear. When she looked back to the canyon rim, the figure was gone. "Core! Status!" she barked into her comms. "Holding, but not for long. These aren't ordinary Forsaken, they've got military-grade weapons." Aaliyah made a split-second decision. "I'm opening a path to the Nightfall tunnels. Follow my lead." She directed Sable toward a narrow fissure in the canyon wall, a hidden entrance to the abandoned mining tunnels that honeycombed the area. It was a dangerous gambit. The tunnels were unstable and home to mutated creatures, but they offered protection from the raiders and the approaching dust storm. As she led the caravan toward the entrance, the ground beneath them trembled. At first, Aaliyah thought it was the hover wagon's engines, but the vibration intensified until the very walls of the canyon shook. "Seismic activity!" Core shouted. "The tunnels will collapse!" "It's our only chance," Aaliyah called back, urging Sable forward faster. "Get the wagons in now!" The caravan lurched into motion, racing for the fissure as rocks began to rain down from the canyon walls. Aaliyah maintained her position at the front, guiding them into the darkness of the Nightfall tunnels. The last wagon had barely cleared the entrance when a massive tremor shook the ground. The canyon wall collapsed behind them with a deafening roar, sealing the entrance and plunging them into darkness, broken only by the hover wagon's lights and the glow of Aaliyah's spear. In the sudden quiet that followed, Aaliyah dismounted, checking Sable for injuries. The creature nuzzled against her hand, apparently unharmed. She turned to assess the caravan's status when a voice from the shadows froze her in place. "Still leading from the front, I see." A tall figure stepped into the pool of light cast by the lead wagon. He removed his rebreather mask, revealing a face Aaliyah had seen countless times in her nightmares. Older now, with a new scar bisecting his left eyebrow, but unmistakably Victor Thorne. His right arm gleamed with cybernetic enhancements that hadn't been there 3 years ago. "You're supposed to be dead," Aaliyah said, her voice dangerously quiet. Victor's expression remained neutral. "I nearly was." Aaliyah's spear flared brilliant red, matching the rage that surged through her. In one swift motion, she lunged forward, the weapon's tip stopping mere centimeters from Victor's throat. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now," she hissed. "Because you need me to get your caravan through these tunnels alive," he replied calmly. The collapse sealed the entrance. The only way out is through the skybound bazaar, and I'm the only one who knows the safe path. Core stepped forward, energy pistol trained on Victor. "We trusted you once before, Thorne. 27 of our people died because of that trust." Victor's eyes remained fixed on Aaliyah. "I never betrayed you. What happened in the ashen fields? It wasn't what you think." "I don't care what it was," Aaliyah snapped. "My mother died believing in you, believing you'd come back with reinforcements. Instead, you disappeared, and we buried our dead alone." A flicker of something, pain, perhaps, crossed Victor's face before his expression hardened again. "We don't have time for this. The raiders will find another way in, and the tunnels aren't safe. You need to keep moving." Aaliyah didn't lower her spear. "Why should we trust you?" "You shouldn't," Victor said simply. "But I'm your only chance of getting those seedlings to where they need to go." Aaliyah stared at him, searching his face for any sign of deception, finding none. She reluctantly lowered her weapon, though the crystalline tip continued to pulse an angry red. "Fine," she said. "You lead us through, but if this is a trap—" "You'll kill me," Victor finished for her. "I understand." Core looked uneasy, but nodded his agreement. "The engines need time to cool anyway. How long to this bazaar?" 8 hours through the tunnels, if we're lucky," Victor replied, already turning to examine the tunnel ahead. And luck isn't something we've had much of lately. Aaliyah remounted Sable, positioning herself directly behind Victor. One wrong move, she warned, and you won't live long enough to regret it. Victor glanced back at her, his expression unreadable. Noted. With that, he led them deeper into the nightfall tunnels, away from the collapsed entrance and into darkness broken only by the eerie blue glow of bioluminescent fungi that clung to the tunnel walls. The caravan moved slowly, the hover wagons barely clearing the narrow passages in some places. Aaliyah kept her eyes fixed on Victor's back, her mind racing with questions. Where had he been for 3 years? How had he survived? And why reappear now, just when her mother's seedlings were being transported? Nothing about this felt like coincidence. After an hour of tense silence, Victor paused at a junction where the tunnel split into 3 branches. He studied the paths, then pointed to the leftmost tunnel. This way. The right tunnel leads to a nesting ground for cave crawlers, and the middle one collapsed last year. And how would you know that? Aaliyah challenged. Victor turned to face her. Because I've been living down here, mapping these tunnels for the past 3 years. Before Aaliyah could respond, a chittering sound echoed from the darkness ahead. Everyone froze. Sable's legs tensed beneath Aaliyah, the creature's sensory whiskers vibrating with alarm. Cave crawlers, Victor whispered, unslinging his rifle. They shouldn't be this far from their nesting grounds. Unless something drove them out, Kor suggested grimly. Victor nodded. We need to move quietly. They hunt by vibration. He led them forward cautiously, each step measured. The chittering grew louder, and soon Aaliyah could see movement in the shadows, multiple legs skittering across stone, carapaces gleaming in the dim light. Cave crawlers were once small arthropods, but radiation and the harsh environment had transformed them into meter-long predators with poisonous mandibles. The lead wagon's repulsor engine suddenly sputtered, the brief surge in sound echoing through the tunnel. The chittering stopped abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence. They heard us, Victor murmured. The attack came from all sides at once, dozens of cave crawlers pouring from crevices in the walls and ceiling. Aaliyah's spear flashed as she impaled the first creature to leap at her, its body disintegrating in a burst of energy. Victor's rifle fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. Keep the wagons moving, Aaliyah shouted to Kor. Don't stop for anything. The caravan lurched forward as Aaliyah and Victor fought a desperate rearguard action. Despite years of distrust, they fell into a rhythm born of countless battles, fought side by side before the Ashen Fields. Victor would call targets, and Aaliyah would strike, her spear a blur of deadly motion. When her flank was exposed, his rifle would bark, dropping creatures before they could reach her. Gradually, they fought their way clear of the main swarm, though stragglers continued to harass them for another kilometer before finally retreating. Aaliyah's breathing was ragged, her shoulder throbbing where the energy bolt had grazed her earlier. Victor appeared unfazed, methodically reloading his weapon as they walked. You've improved, he commented, breaking the silence. Your form is more efficient. Aaliyah didn't acknowledge the compliment. Why were you with the raiders? Victor glanced at her. I was tracking them. They've been hitting caravans all across the Western Territories, taking specific cargo. Like our seedlings? Exactly like your seedlings, Victor confirmed. Someone's been paying them to intercept shipments of your mother's hybrid grain. Aaliyah frowned. Why? Who would want to stop us from growing blight-resistant crops? That's what I've been trying to figure out. Victor paused, studying her face. Your mother's work was more important than you know. Aaliyah. Don't, she warned, her voice tight. Don't you dare talk about her. Victor fell silent, respecting her boundary for the moment. They continued through the tunnels, the air growing warmer and more humid as they descended deeper into the planet's crust. After several more hours of tense progress, they reached a vast underground cavern where an underground river flowed across their path. Its waters, an unnatural purple hue. Toxic, Victor explained, pointing to the river. Mining runoff from the old operations. We'll need to use the suspended bridge. He indicated a narrow bridge of woven metal cables, spanning the river 20 meters above the surface. It looked barely wide enough for a person, let alone the hover wagons. "You're joking," Kor said flatly. "Those wagons can't cross that." "They can if we reconfigure the repulsors to spread their field," Victor replied. "It'll be like walking on a wire, but it's possible." Kor, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. The engineer studied the bridge, then nodded reluctantly. "He's right. If we invert the field polarity and reduce power to 40%, we can create enough stability to cross." Aaliyah made the decision. "Do it. How long will the reconfiguration take?" "An hour, maybe less," Kor answered, already moving toward the lead wagon. While Kor worked, Aaliyah stood at the edge of the river, staring into its poisonous depths. Victor approached cautiously, maintaining a respectful distance. "Your shoulder needs treatment," he observed. Aaliyah ignored him. "The longer you leave it, the worse the energy burn will get," he persisted. "I have medical supplies in my pack." After a moment of stubborn silence, Aaliyah relented, shrugging off her jacket to reveal the angry red burn on her shoulder. Victor knelt beside her, removing a small medkit from his pack. With surprising gentleness, he cleaned the wound and applied a cooling gel that immediately numbed the pain. "Why did you disappear?" Aaliyah asked suddenly, her voice barely audible over the rushing water. "We thought you were dead." Victor's hands stilled momentarily before continuing their work. "I was captured during the retreat from the Ashen Fields. The official report listed me as killed in action because that was easier than admitting they'd lost a captain to the enemy." "Captured by whom? The Forsaken don't take prisoners." "Not the Forsaken," Victor said grimly. "Something else. Something worse." Before he could elaborate, Kor called out that the wagons were ready. Victor secured a bandage over Aaliyah's wound and stepped back, the moment of potential revelation lost. The crossing proved every bit as treacherous as expected. The reconfigured repulsors allowed the wagons to maintain precarious balance on the narrow bridge, but each meter was a test of nerve and skill. Aaliyah crossed first on Sable, the six-legged mount, picking its way carefully across the swaying structure. Victor went last, ensuring everyone made it safely. When they reached the other side, Aaliyah noticed Victor, scanning the tunnel ahead with unusual intensity. His cybernetic hand flexed repeatedly, as though preparing for action. "What aren't you telling me?" she demanded. Victor met her gaze. "The skybound bazaar is just ahead. It's changed since you would have last seen it. The Council of Blades has extended their influence here." "The Council," Kor interjected, his expression darkening. "Those zealots from Iron Keep?" Victor nodded. "They've been expanding their territory, establishing checkpoints at all major trade routes. They claim it's for security, but they're searching for specific items. Items like your seedlings." Aaliyah's hand moved instinctively to her spear. "Then, we'll have to avoid their checkpoint." "Impossible," Victor replied. "The bazaar is the only way through to the surface now. But," he added, "I know people there. We might be able to negotiate passage." The tunnel gradually widened, the rough-hewn walls giving way to more finished construction. Soon, they emerged into a vast cavern that took Aaliyah's breath away despite her familiarity with underground settlements. The skybound bazaar spread before them, a sprawling market built on multiple levels, connected by spiral staircases and rickety elevators. Thousands of lights, electric, gas, and bioluminescent, illuminated the space, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the stone ceiling 100 meters above. Vendors called out their wares from stalls, crowded together in haphazard rows, while patrons of all descriptions haggled, shouted, and moved through the chaotic marketplace. And everywhere, armored figures patrolled in pairs, the Knights of the Council, their distinctive obsidian armor absorbing light rather than reflecting it, making them seem like moving shadows among the colorful crowd. "Keep your heads down," Victor murmured. "I need to find Sylvia. She can help us get through." "And where is this Sylvia?" Aaliyah asked skeptically. Victor pointed to a ramshackle structure on the third level that appeared to be a combination tavern and repair shop. "The Broken Gear, she runs it." They left the hover wagons in a secured bay near the entrance, paying the exorbitant fee with precious water tokens. Kor remained with the wagons, while Aaliyah accompanied Victor, unwilling to let him out of her sight. Sable stayed close to her side, drawing curious and wary glances from the bazaar's denizens. As they made their way through the crowded marketplace, Aaliyah couldn't help noticing how Victor moved, always aware of his surroundings, noting every exit, every potential threat. It was the behavior of someone who had lived in constant danger for a very long time. They had nearly reached the stairs to the third level when a commotion erupted ahead. Two knights had cornered a vendor, demanding to see his identification and inventory records. The man was protesting, insisting he had already been checked earlier that day. "This isn't right," one of the bazaar patrons muttered nearby. "Third inspection this week. They're looking for something specific." Victor tensed, pulling Aaliyah into the shadow of a support column. "They're increasing their searches. This isn't good." "What exactly are they looking for?" Aaliyah whispered. "Later," Victor replied tersely. "We need to get to Sylvia before—" "Halt!" The sharp command came from behind them. A knight stood less than 10 meters away, his gloved hand resting on the energy blade at his hip. "Identification, now!" Victor stepped forward smoothly. "Of course, sir. Just traders passing through." He reached slowly into his jacket, making a show of searching for documentation. The knight's posture shifted subtly, his hand tightening on his weapon. "You," he said, looking past Victor to Aaliyah. "Remove your hood." Aaliyah hesitated, then complied, pushing back the hood that had partially obscured her face. The knight studied her features. Then his gaze dropped to the bioluminescent spear, strapped to her back. His posture changed immediately. "You will both come with me," he said, his voice harder now. "The captain will want to speak with you." Victor's hand moved imperceptibly toward his concealed sidearm. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake." The knight cut him off. "You are harboring a carrier of the forbidden technology. Resistance will be met with lethal force." Aaliyah's mind raced. Forbidden technology? Her mother's spear? Before she could process this, Sable growled, sensing her distress and preparing to attack. In the split second before violence erupted, a deafening explosion rocked the marketplace. A section of the upper level collapsed, sending debris and screaming patrons plummeting to the floor below. In the ensuing chaos, Victor grabbed Aaliyah's arm and pulled her away from the distracted knight. "Run!" he shouted over the din. "To the Broken Gear!" They sprinted through the panicking crowd, Sable bounding alongside them. Behind them, more explosions sounded, clearly coordinated attacks designed to create maximum confusion. Knights rushed toward the blast sites, temporarily forgetting about Aaliyah and Victor. "Did you plan this?" Aaliyah demanded, as they raced up a spiral staircase to the third level. "No," Victor replied grimly, "but I know who did. The timing is too perfect." They reached the Broken Gear, a dilapidated establishment with a faded holographic sign displaying a fractured gear wheel. Victor pushed through the door without knocking, pulling Aaliyah inside after him. The interior was dimly lit and sparsely populated. A few patrons huddled over drinks, seemingly unconcerned by the chaos outside. Behind the bar stood a woman with silver-streaked black hair and eyes that gleamed with cybernetic enhancements. She looked up as they entered, her expression changing from annoyance to recognition. "Victor," she said flatly, I should have known those explosions were for you. Not my doing, Sylvia, Victor replied, moving to the bar. But someone knew we were coming. Sylvia's enhanced eyes flicked to Aaliyah, then to the spear on her back. Interesting company you're keeping these days. We need passage to the surface, Victor said, ignoring the comment. The northern exit, preferably. Sylvia laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Everyone needs passage to the surface right now. The council has locked down all exits after those explosions. You're stuck here, like the rest of us. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the grimy window, they could see knights establishing a perimeter, checking everyone attempting to leave the area. We can't stay here, Aaliyah said urgently. They're looking for my spear. And our caravan, Core and Core, are still with the wagons. Sylvia raised an eyebrow. Caravan? What are you carrying that's worth all this trouble? Before either could answer, the door burst open. Aaliyah whirled, spear in hand, expecting knights. But instead, 4 rough-looking individuals entered, their clothing marking them as mercenaries rather than council forces. There they are, the leader said, pointing at Aaliyah and Victor. The council's paying top rate for their capture. Sylvia sighed dramatically. Really, Barask, in my establishment? The mercenary leader grinned, revealing metal-capped teeth. Sorry, Sylvia. Business is business. Step aside. Instead of complying, Sylvia reached beneath the counter and pulled out a modified pulse shotgun. My business is my business, and I don't appreciate armed thugs threatening my customers. The standoff lasted only seconds before both sides moved. Aaliyah's spear flashed, knocking the weapon from the nearest mercenary's hand. Victor drew his sidearm with blinding speed, firing a disabling shot that caught another attacker in the leg. Sylvia's shotgun roared, the concussive blast throwing the leader against the wall with bone-breaking force. The 4th mercenary, seeing his companions dispatched so efficiently, turned to flee, only to run headlong into Sable, who had circled behind during the confusion. The creature pinned him to the floor with 2 of its 6 legs, hissing menacingly. Well, Sylvia said into the sudden silence, lowering her weapon. I suppose I'm committed now. She turned to Victor. There's a maintenance tunnel behind the kitchen. It connects to the old emergency evacuation routes. If your friends and their wagons can make it to the eastern storage bays, you might be able to get out that way. Victor nodded gratefully. Thank you, Sylvia. Don't thank me yet, she replied grimly. The evacuation routes lead straight to Iron Keep Citadel. You'll be trading one problem for another. The Citadel is our destination anyway, Aaliyah said, causing both Victor and Sylvia to look at her in surprise. It is? Victor asked. The seedlings are meant for the agricultural domes at Iron Keep, Aaliyah explained. My mother had an arrangement with their chief botanist, Dr. Elias Vorn. Sylvia and Victor exchanged a significant look that Aaliyah couldn't interpret. What? She demanded. What aren't you telling me? Victor hesitated, then said, Dr. Vorn was found dead 3 weeks ago. Official report said laboratory accident. But nothing about the council is ever as it seems. Sylvia finished for him. If your seedlings were bound for Vorn's lab, then you're walking into a trap. Aaliyah's mind reeled with this new information. Her mother had trusted Dr. Vorn, had worked with him for years on developing the blight-resistant strain. If he was dead, murdered, if Victor's implication was correct, then the entire mission was compromised. We need to contact Core and Core, she said, forcing herself to focus on immediate concerns. Get them, and the wagons to the eastern bays. Victor nodded, already activating his comm unit. As he spoke quietly to Core, arranging the rendezvous, Aaliyah turned to Sylvia. You know more than you're saying, she stated, not a question. Sylvia's cybernetic eyes whirred softly as they adjusted focus. Everyone in these parts knows more than they're saying. Girl, that's how we stay alive. She paused, then added, But if you're carrying what I think you are, then the Council isn't the only group that will be hunting you." "What do you mean?" Sylvia glanced at Victor, who had finished his communication and was listening. "Tell her," she said to him. "She deserves to know what she's really involved in." Victor's expression tightened. "Not here. Not now. We need to move." Before Aaliyah could protest, the building shook with another explosion, this one much closer than the previous blasts. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the few remaining patrons scrambled for the door. "Too late," Sylvia muttered, grabbing her shotgun again. "They've found you." The front wall of the establishment suddenly disintegrated in a blinding flash of energy, the debris narrowly missing them. Through the swirling dust stepped three figures in the distinctive obsidian armor of the Council's elite guards, the Blade Captains. "Aaliyah Rain and Victor Thorne," the central figure announced, his voice distorted by his helmet's voice modulator. "By order of the Council of Blades, you are hereby detained for possession of forbidden technology and suspected conspiracy against the established order." Victor moved with unexpected speed, firing 3 precise shots that should have dropped the captains where they stood. Instead, the energy bolts dissipated harmlessly against their armor. "Phase shift protection," Victor muttered. "They've upgraded since last time." The lead captain raised his arm, revealing a mounted energy weapon. "Surrender the spear and the seedlings, and your deaths will be painless." Aaliyah's response was immediate and wordless. Her spear flashed blue-white as she charged, the crystalline tip aimed at the gap in the captain's armor at the neck joint, a weakness she had observed in previous encounters with Council forces. The captain parried with his arm guard, the impact sending shockwaves through both combatants. The battle erupted in earnest then, a chaotic dance of energy weapons and close-quarters combat. Victor and Sylvia engaged the other 2 captains, their attacks coordinated, despite having never fought together before. Sable bounded into the fray, its powerful limbs knocking one captain off balance long enough for Sylvia to land a point-blank shotgun blast that cracked his armor. Aaliyah found herself matched against the lead captain, their combat styles eerily similar. For every strike she launched, he had a counter. For every opening she created, he had a response. It was like fighting a mirror image of herself, and the realization chilled her. The Council had studied her, prepared specifically for her. "Your mother should have cooperated," the captain said as they circled each other. "None of this would have been necessary if she had simply given us what we wanted." The mention of her mother sent a surge of rage through Aaliyah. Her spear flared crimson, matching her fury, and she attacked with renewed ferocity. This time, the captain struggled to maintain his defense, forced backward by the sheer intensity of her assault. Across the room, Victor had gained the upper hand against his opponent, his cybernetic arm revealing hidden capabilities as it transformed into a blade that could penetrate the phase shift armor. He dispatched his opponent with a precise thrust to the chest, then turned to assist Sylvia, who was bleeding from a gash across her forehead, but still fighting. "Aaliyah!" Victor called out. "We need to go, now!" Aaliyah barely heard him, lost in the rhythm of combat and the roaring of blood in her ears. Her spear moved as though possessed of its own will, striking, feinting, parrying. The captain's armor began to fail under the relentless assault, cracks appearing across its obsidian surface. With a final, devastating thrust, Aaliyah drove her spear through the captain's chest plate. The crystalline tip discharged a massive pulse of energy that shattered the armor from within. The captain collapsed, his helmet rolling away to reveal a face disturbingly devoid of expression, eyes vacant even in death. Aaliyah stared at the fallen captain, breathing heavily. Victor approached cautiously, aware of the dangerous energy still crackling around her spear. "Aaliyah," he said softly, "we need to go. There will be more coming." She turned to him, her eyes blazing with the same intensity as her weapon. "You're going to tell me everything, about my mother, about these seedlings, About why the Council wants them so badly. Everything. Victor nodded solemnly. I will. But first, we need to reach your caravan and get to Iron Keep. Sylvia, clutching her wounded side, gestured toward the back of the establishment. The maintenance tunnel. It'll take you directly to the eastern bays. I'll hold them off here as long as I can. Aaliyah hesitated. Come with us. Sylvia smiled grimly. My fight is here. Has been for 20 years. She glanced at Victor. Tell her the truth, Thorn. All of it. Or I swear I'll find you in whatever hell awaits us and make you regret it. Victor clasped Sylvia's shoulder briefly, a gesture of respect between old comrades. Stay alive, Sylvia. You too, Captain. She turned to her defenses as Aaliyah, Victor, and Sable disappeared through the back entrance into the maintenance tunnel. The tunnel was narrow and poorly lit, forcing them to move in single file. Victor led the way, his cybernetic arm emitting enough light to illuminate the path ahead. Aaliyah followed closely, her mind churning with questions and a growing sense that she had been kept in the dark about something vital. Start talking, she demanded, as they hurried through the passage. What did my mother really develop? Why does the Council want it so badly? Victor's pace didn't slow as he answered. The blight that's been destroying crops across the settlements, it's not natural. It was engineered, a test case for something much worse. Aaliyah nearly stumbled in shock. Engineered? By whom? We don't know for certain. But your mother discovered something when she was developing the resistant strain. The blight contains non-terrestrial genetic markers, alien DNA, for lack of a better term. The implications were staggering. You're saying? I'm saying we're being softened up for an invasion. Victor cut her off. The blight was phase 1. Attack the food supply, create dependency and desperation. Your mother's hybrid strain isn't just resistant to the blight. It can actively neutralize it, reverse its effects in the soil. And the Council doesn't want that to happen, Aaliyah concluded, the pieces falling into place. But why? Why would they want our crops to fail? Victor paused at a junction, checking their bearings before selecting the right-hand path. Because the Council isn't working for humanity anymore. They've made some kind of arrangement with whatever's coming. Protection, perhaps, or power in the new order. The tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a vast, dimly lit chamber that appeared to be an abandoned storage facility. Crates and containers were stacked haphazardly, covered in years of dust. We're almost to the eastern bays, Victor said, checking his comm unit. Core reports they've reached the rendezvous point with all wagons intact. Aaliyah was about to respond when a soft, scraping sound came from somewhere in the shadows to their right. Sable tensed, a low growl building in its throat. We're not alone, Aaliyah whispered, her spear already in hand. Victor nodded, weapon raised. Could be scavengers or... The attack came without warning, a barrage of energy bolts firing from multiple positions among the storage containers. Aaliyah and Victor dove for cover, returning fire as they sought to identify their attackers. Mercenaries, Victor called out, recognizing their tactics. Professional ones, not like those thugs at the Broken Gear. Aaliyah cursed under her breath. The Council must have put a bounty on us. They were pinned down, the mercenaries' superior position giving them a deadly advantage. Aaliyah glanced at Victor, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded, understanding her intent without words, a reminder of how well they had once worked together. In a coordinated movement, Aaliyah sent Sable charging toward the right flank, while she and Victor split up, attacking from different angles. The sudden three-pronged assault threw the mercenaries into momentary confusion, giving Aaliyah the opening she needed. Her spear cut through the air in deadly arcs, each strike finding its mark with unerring precision. Victor fought with equal skill, his cybernetic arm transforming again, this time into a shield that absorbed energy bolts before redirecting them back at their source. The mercenaries, clearly unprepared for such formidable opponents, began to fall back. Their leader, a tall woman with a scarred face, shouted orders in a language Aaliyah didn't recognize. The remaining mercenaries formed a defensive circle, their weapons trained outward. "Surrender the spear and the seedlings," the leader called out in heavily accented Common. "The council pays well, but we can negotiate a better price for your lives." Victor responded with a burst of suppressing fire that forced the mercenaries deeper into cover. "We're not here to negotiate." The battle resumed with increased intensity. Aaliyah found herself fighting back-to-back with Victor, just as they had countless times before the Ashen Fields. Despite 3 years of bitterness and distrust, their bodies remembered the rhythm of combat together, each anticipating the other's moves, covering weaknesses, amplifying strengths. Sable rejoined them, blood staining its mandibles, but otherwise unharmed. The creature moved in perfect synchrony with Aaliyah, attacking when she advanced, defending when she retreated. Through the neural interface, Aaliyah could sense Sable's fierce determination, its unwavering loyalty. Gradually, they gained the upper hand. The mercenary leader, seeing her forces decimated, made a final, desperate charge toward Aaliyah. Their weapons clashed, energy blade against bioluminescent spear, in a shower of sparks and crackling power. The mercenary was skilled, but Aaliyah had the advantage of the neural bond with her weapon. With a lightning-fast feint and thrust, she disarmed her opponent, sending the energy blade skittering across the floor. The mercenary leader dropped to her knees, hands raised in surrender. "Finish it," she said, her voice resigned. Aaliyah hesitated, her spear poised for the killing blow. Then, making a decision, she lowered her weapon. "Who hired you? Who put the bounty on us?" The mercenary laughed bitterly. "You think the council shares such information with their tools? We were contacted anonymously, paid half in advance. The rest would come when we delivered your heads and that spear." Victor approached, his weapon still trained on the kneeling woman. "What about the seedlings? Were you told to recover those as well?" The mercenary frowned. "Seedlings? No. Just the spear and your deaths. That was the contract." Aaliyah and Victor exchanged puzzled glances. If the mercenaries hadn't been sent for the seedlings, then either the council had hired multiple groups with different objectives, or someone else was also hunting them. "Go," Aaliyah said to the mercenary leader. "Take your wounded and leave. If I see you again, I won't be so merciful." The woman rose slowly, studying Aaliyah with newfound respect. "The rumors about you don't do you justice. Aaliyah Rain, I hope, for your sake, that you never discover what that spear really is." With that cryptic statement, she gathered her surviving forces and disappeared into the shadows. "What did she mean?" Aaliyah asked Victor, as they continued toward the eastern bays. "About the spear?" Victor's expression was troubled. "I don't know everything. Your mother kept some secrets even from me, but I believe the spear contains the same alien genetic material as the blight, repurposed, weaponized in a different way." Aaliyah looked at the weapon in her hand, the crystalline tip pulsing softly with her heartbeat. "Are you saying this thing is alive? Alien?" "In a manner of speaking," Victor replied cautiously. "It's a symbiotic organism, bonded to you through the neural interface. Your mother created it as a prototype defense against whatever is coming. That's why the council wants it destroyed. It represents a threat to their new allies." They reached the end of the storage facility, where a heavy security door blocked their path. Victor approached the access panel, his cybernetic arm interfacing directly with the system. After a moment, the door slid open, revealing the eastern storage bays beyond. Core and Core were waiting with the hover wagons, relief evident on their weathered faces as Aaliyah and Victor appeared. "We thought you might not make it," Core said gruffly. "Council forces are everywhere, conducting searches sector by sector." "We need to move," Victor urged. The evacuation routes will take us to the surface near Iron Keep, but will be exposed once we emerge. As they prepared the caravan for departure, Aaliyah pulled Victor aside. If what you're saying is true, if my mother's seedlings can counteract this engineered blight, then why are we still heading to Iron Keep? If the council has been compromised? Because Iron Keep is where the answers are, Victor interrupted. And because your mother hid something in those seedlings. Something she never told anyone about. The resistant strain is only part of the story. Aaliyah stared at him, trying to process this new revelation. What else could there be? Victor's expression was grim. A weapon. I believe a last resort against whatever's coming. But to activate it, we need access to the equipment in Dr. Vorn's laboratory at the Citadel. So we're walking into a trap, hoping to spring our own, Aaliyah summarized, a hint of her old respect for Victor's tactical thinking, surfacing despite her lingering distrust. Exactly. Victor glanced at the waiting caravan. Are you ready for this? Aaliyah's spear pulsed in response to her determination. I don't have a choice. My mother gave her life for these seedlings, for whatever weapon she hid inside them. I won't let that sacrifice be in vain. With that, they rejoined the caravan, and Victor led them into the evacuation tunnels, a straight path to Iron Keep Citadel, and whatever awaited them there. The evacuation tunnels were wider than the mining passages, clearly designed to accommodate large numbers of people in an emergency. The walls were reinforced with Durasteel panels, and emergency lighting strips ran along the floor, currently dimmed to minimal illumination. The air was stale but breathable, filtered through ancient purification systems that still functioned after decades of neglect. As they progressed, Aaliyah rode alongside Victor, her curiosity about the past 3 years finally overcoming her anger. Where were you? She asked simply. After the Ashen Fields. Victor was silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the tunnel ahead. I was captured, as I told you, taken to a facility beneath the glass desert, where they experimented on me. He flexed his cybernetic arm unconsciously. They were studying human physiology, testing our limits, our adaptability. They, the aliens? They're proxies, Victor clarified. Humans who had already turned, already pledged their allegiance to what's coming. The council leadership among them. Aaliyah absorbed this information, her mind struggling to reconcile the stoic, unyielding captain she had known with the man beside her now, still strong, still determined, but carrying wounds both visible and hidden. How did you escape? A ghost of a smile crossed Victor's face. Your mother. She never believed I was dead. She spent 2 years tracking down rumors, following leads. When she finally located the facility, she didn't have the resources for a frontal assault. So she did what she did best. She created something new. He pulled up his sleeve, revealing a small scar on his forearm. A microorganism, specifically engineered to target the security systems in the facility. She smuggled it in through a supply shipment. 3 days later, every lock in the place failed simultaneously. Aaliyah felt a surge of pride and grief for her mother, her brilliant, determined mother, who had never stopped fighting, never stopped believing. Why didn't you come back to us? She asked. The question that had haunted her for 3 years, finally spoken aloud. Victor's expression darkened. Because I learned something in that facility, something that changed everything. The invasion isn't coming, Aaliyah. It's already here. Has been for decades. Sleeper agents embedded in every settlement, every power structure. I couldn't risk returning until I knew who could be trusted. So you let us think you were dead, Aaliyah said, her voice hardening again. Let my mother die believing she had saved you for nothing. I never wanted that, Victor replied, genuine pain in his voice. I was tracking the infiltrators, trying to identify the command structure. By the time I learned about your mother's illness, it was too late. I couldn't reach her without exposing myself and potentially compromising everything she had worked for. Before Aaliyah could respond, Kor called out from the lead wagon. "We're approaching the surface exit. Sensors indicate we're half a kilometer from Iron Keep's outer perimeter." Victor nodded, his focus shifting back to their immediate situation. "The Council will have guards posted at all official entrances. We'll need to find another way in." "I might know one," Aaliyah said reluctantly. "When I was younger, my mother would bring me to Iron Keep for her meetings with Dr. Vorn. There's a maintenance shaft behind the eastern greenhouse complex that's minimally guarded. It leads directly to the lower laboratories." Victor raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You never mentioned this during our previous missions to Iron Keep." "It was my mother's secret," Aaliyah replied. "Something just between us. I never thought I'd need to use it." As they approached the surface exit, the tunnel began to slope upward. The air freshened, carrying the distinctive metallic tang of Iron Keep's surrounding Badlands. When they finally emerged into the open air, night had fallen, the twin moons casting eerie blue-green light across the barren landscape. Iron Keep Citadel loomed before them, a massive structure of metal and stone built into the side of a rust-colored mountain. Its towers stretched toward the sky, energy shields shimmering faintly around the upper levels. The lower sections appeared less protected, including the greenhouse complex Aaliyah had mentioned, its transparent domes glowing with artificial daylight for the plants within. "We'll approach from the south," Victor decided, after studying the Citadel's defenses. "There's a ridge that should provide cover for the wagons. From there, Aaliyah and I will continue on foot to the maintenance shaft." Kor frowned. "And if you don't return?" "Wait 12 hours, Victor replied. "If we haven't made contact by then, take the seedlings and head for the northern settlements. Find a woman named Mara Kell in Duskhaven. Tell her Obsidian Shore. She'll know what to do." With the plan established, they guided the caravan toward the southern ridge, moving cautiously to avoid detection by Iron Keep's perimeter sensors. Once the wagons were securely hidden, Aaliyah prepared for the infiltration mission. She checked her spear's energy levels, satisfied to see the crystalline tip glowing with steady blue light. "Leave Sable with the caravan," Victor suggested. "We'll need to be as inconspicuous as possible." Aaliyah hesitated, reluctant to separate from her mount. Through their neural link, she sensed Sable's unease at the idea as well. But logic won out. A six-legged predator would hardly go unnoticed in Iron Keep. "Stay with Kor," she instructed Sable, stroking the creature's armored head. "Protect the seedlings." Sable's sensory whiskers twitched in acknowledgement, though the creature's reluctance was clear in the way it pressed against Aaliyah's hand. As they prepared to depart, Kor approached Aaliyah, his weathered face solemn in the moonlight. "Your mother would be proud," he said quietly. "Whatever happens in there, know that." Aaliyah nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. Kor had been her mother's friend for decades, had watched Aaliyah grow from a child into the woman she was now. His approval meant more than she could express. With final preparations complete, Aaliyah and Victor set out toward Iron Keep, using the rugged terrain for cover as they approached the eastern greenhouse complex. They moved in silence, their years of working together evident in the way they communicated with gestures and glances rather than words. As they drew closer to the Citadel, Aaliyah was struck by how little it had changed since her last visit years ago. The same guards patrolled in predictable patterns. The same security systems hummed with artificial vigilance. If the Council had truly been compromised, they were maintaining appearances with remarkable dedication. The maintenance shaft was where Aaliyah remembered, concealed behind a storage unit for greenhouse equipment. The access panel required a security code, but Aaliyah keyed in the sequence her mother had taught her, without hesitation. "Mom always said some things never change," she murmured, as the panel accepted the years-old code and the door slid open, including the laziness of Iron Keep's security administrators. The shaft was narrow, forcing them to climb down in single file. Victor went first, his cybernetic arm providing both light and a secure handhold on the metal rungs. Aaliyah followed, her spear strapped securely to her back, its gentle glow providing additional illumination. They descended for what felt like an eternity, the air growing progressively cooler and damper. Finally, the shaft opened into a maintenance corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits. Distant machinery hummed, providing cover for any noise they might make. "Which way to Vorn's lab?" Victor whispered. Aaliyah oriented herself, recalling the layout from childhood visits. "East, 3 junctions, then north at the 4th. The lab complex should be directly above us after that." They moved cautiously through the corridor, encountering no one. The lower levels of Iron Keep were largely automated, maintained by drones rather than human workers. This had always struck Aaliyah as strange for a settlement that prided itself on providing employment for its citizens. But now, it made a sinister kind of sense. Fewer witnesses to whatever the council was doing in these hidden spaces. At the 3rd junction, voices echoed from around the corner. Victor pulled Aaliyah into a recessed doorway, their bodies pressed close as 2 technicians walked past, deep in conversation about power fluctuations in the eastern sector. Once they had passed, Aaliyah and Victor continued, reaching the 4th junction without further incident. The access point to the laboratory level was a vertical tube with a gravity lift, a luxury rarely seen outside Iron Keep's walls. Victor studied the control panel with suspicion. "This will log our ascent in the security system," he pointed out. Aaliyah nodded. "We don't have much choice, but the lab should be minimally staffed at this hour." Taking a calculated risk, they activated the gravity lift. The sensation of weightlessness momentarily disoriented Aaliyah as they floated upward through the tube. When they emerged on the laboratory level, they found themselves in a pristine white corridor marked with color-coded lines on the floor. "Dr. Vorn's lab would be in the biological research wing," Aaliyah whispered, pointing to the green line. "This way." They followed the green line through a series of automated security checkpoints. Aaliyah noticed that Victor seemed to know exactly where the cameras were positioned, guiding them through blind spots with practiced ease. His time as a captive had clearly taught him much about avoiding detection. When they reached the biological research wing, however, they encountered an unexpected obstacle. The entire section was sealed behind a quarantine barrier, the entrance marked with biohazard warnings. "This isn't normal," Aaliyah said, studying the security locks. "These are level 4 containment protocols. Whatever they're doing in there, they're treating it as extremely dangerous." Victor's expression darkened. "Or they're keeping something extremely dangerous out." Before they could decide on a course of action, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began to pulse along the corridors, and automated announcements echoed from hidden speakers. "Security breach detected in sectors 7 through 9. All personnel initiate lockdown procedures immediately." "That's not for us," Victor said, tension evident in his voice. "We haven't triggered any alarms." As if in answer to his statement, the quarantine barrier in front of them suddenly deactivated. The laboratory doors slid open, revealing a darkened space beyond. From within came sounds of destruction, breaking glass, overturning furniture, and a high-pitched keening that raised the hair on Aaliyah's arms. Someone's releasing whatever was contained, Victor realized, drawing his weapon, creating a diversion. Aaliyah's spear was already in her hand, the crystalline tip flaring bright red in response to the imminent danger. "We need to get to Vorn's lab before it's destroyed in whatever chaos this is." They entered the biological research wing cautiously, moving through laboratories that showed signs of recent abandonment, half-completed experiments, still steaming beverages beside workstations, personal items left behind in the rush to evacuate. The sounds of destruction grew louder as they approached the central laboratory complex. Dr. Vorn's laboratory was immediately recognizable to Aaliyah. The same layout, the same meticulous organization she remembered from childhood visits. But now, much of it lay in ruins. Equipment had been smashed, specimens destroyed, and data terminals systematically disabled. In the center of the destruction stood a figure that made Aaliyah's blood run cold. Tall and unnaturally thin, with limbs that bent at impossible angles. It moved with a liquid grace that seemed to defy physics. Its skin, if it could be called that, shimmered with a metallic iridescence that changed color with each movement. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth surface occasionally rippling with patterns that suggested expressions. "Infiltrator," Victor breathed, his voice barely audible. "Advanced stage." The creature turned at the sound, its non-face rippling into what Aaliyah instinctively recognized as an expression of surprise. Then it spoke, the voice emerging not from any visible mouth, but seeming to materialize directly in their minds. "The bearer comes," it said. The mental voice, neither male nor female, but somehow both and neither. "With the weapon and the cure. Our calculations did not predict this convergence." Aaliyah felt Victor tense beside her, ready to attack, but she placed a restraining hand on his arm. Something about the creature's words gave her pause. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her spear held defensively before her. The creature's form rippled again, patterns suggesting consideration. "Destroying that which would destroy us. The one you called Vorn was creating abominations. Your species weaponized against mine." "You mean the seedlings," Aaliyah said, understanding dawning. "The blight-resistant strain." "More than resistant," the creature replied. "Aggressive, consuming, converting our spores to your biology. Genocide in microscopic form." Victor's grip on his weapon tightened. "That's what your kind has been doing to us for decades. The blight was just the beginning." The creature's form shimmered in what might have been acknowledgement. "Preparation, transformation, evolution. Your world would become suitable for our existence. Some of your kind would survive, adapted. The rest, resources for the new ecosystem." A cold fury filled Aaliyah as she realized the full implications. "You've been terraforming our planet, changing it to suit yourselves, regardless of the cost to us." "Survival," the creature said simply. "Your mother understood this principle. She created weapons against us, the spear, the seedlings. But she did not understand the full scope of what approaches." At the mention of her mother, Aaliyah's spear flared blindingly bright, responding to her surge of emotion. The creature recoiled, its form distorting as though in pain. "The weapon recognizes its purpose," it said, mental voice now tinged with what Aaliyah interpreted as fear. "But it is incomplete without the key. The Council has taken the key." "What key?" Aaliyah demanded. "What are you talking about?" Instead of answering, the creature suddenly lunged toward a previously undamaged section of the laboratory, a sealed containment unit built into the wall. Victor fired, his weapon discharging a burst of energy that passed harmlessly through the creature's shifting form. Aaliyah's spear, however, connected when she thrust it forward instinctively. The crystalline tip sank into the creature's substance, and both weapon and infiltrator flared with blinding light. For a moment, Aaliyah's mind was flooded with alien images, vast swarms moving through the void between stars. Worlds transformed from familiar atmospheres to swirling miasmas of spores and crystalline structures. And something massive approaching, a presence so vast it defied comprehension. The connection broke as the creature tore itself away from her spear, leaving a piece of its substance behind, absorbed into the crystal. It retreated, its form destabilizing, patches of its surface solidifying into brittle shards that broke off and dissolved into dust. "The Armada comes," it said, its mental voice fading. "The vanguard approaches. The Council has made its choice. Adaptation rather than extinction. Your mother's weapon is your only hope, but without the key, it remains dormant." With those final words, the creature collapsed entirely, its body crystallizing and then crumbling into a pile of iridescent dust on the laboratory floor. Aaliyah stared at the remains, her mind reeling from the alien contact and the revelations it had brought. Victor approached cautiously, his weapon still trained on the dust as though expecting it to reconstitute. "Are you all right?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. Aaliyah nodded slowly, though she felt far from all right. "It showed me things. An invasion fleet, I think, coming here. And something about a key my mother created. Something the Council has taken." Victor's expression hardened. "Then we need to find it. The containment unit it was trying to reach." They moved to the sealed unit, which appeared to be the only undamaged equipment in the laboratory. The access panel required a biometric scan, but Victor's cybernetic arm interfaced with the system, bypassing the security measures. The unit hissed open, revealing a single object inside, a data crystal, pulsing with the same bioluminescent energy as Aaliyah's spear. "This must be what it was after," Victor said, carefully removing the crystal. "Your mother's research, perhaps? Or instructions for activating whatever weapon she built into the seedlings." Before Aaliyah could respond, the laboratory doors slid open. A squad of council knights entered, led by a tall figure in ornate obsidian armor, adorned with glowing red sigils, a member of the Council of Blades themselves. "Victor Thorne and Aaliyah Rain," the counselor said, voice distorted by their helmet. "How convenient that you would deliver yourselves to us, along with the final component we've been seeking." The knights spread out, weapons trained on Aaliyah and Victor. Escape seemed impossible, but Aaliyah noticed Victor subtly shifting his position, placing himself between her and the majority of the knights. He was preparing to create an opening for her to escape. "Don't," she whispered, gripping his arm. "Not again." The counselor approached, seemingly unconcerned by the infiltrator's remains or the destruction of the laboratory. "The data crystal, if you please, and the spear as well. In exchange, I offer you positions of privilege in the New Order. Your skills would be valuable to us." Victor laughed bitterly. "Serving the things that tortured me for a year? I'll pass." "And I'd rather die than betray my mother's work," Aaliyah added, her spear pulsing in agreement. The counselor sighed, the sound strange through the helmet's modulator. Such predictable responses. "Very well. Take them to the Emberlake chamber. The council will convene to witness their execution." The knights closed in, energy restraints ready. But before they could secure either prisoner, Victor activated something in his cybernetic arm. A pulse of electromagnetic energy rippled outward, temporarily disabling the knight's weapons and armor systems. In the moment of confusion, he tossed the data crystal to Aaliyah. "Run!" he shouted, engaging the nearest knight in hand-to-hand combat. Aaliyah hesitated for only a second before making her decision. Instead of fleeing, she charged into the fray, her spear a blur of deadly motion as she fought to reach Victor's side. Together, they carved a path through the disoriented knights, fighting with the synchronized precision that had once made them legendary among the settlement's defenders. The counselor, however, remained unaffected by the electromagnetic pulse. Their advanced armor protected against such attacks. They drew a weapon unlike anything Aaliyah had seen before, a blade of pure energy that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, its edge undefined yet unmistakably lethal. "The council chamber, then," the counselor said, moving to block their escape route. "We shall make a spectacle of your defeat after all." Victor and Aaliyah found themselves being herded down the corridor, fighting knights at every turn, but unable to break free of the tightening circle. The counselor led them deeper into Iron Keep, toward the ceremonial heart of the citadel, where the Council of Blades held court. As they fought, Aaliyah noticed something strange. The data crystal in her pocket was growing warmer, pulsing in rhythm with her spear. The crystal's glow intensified as they approached the council chamber, as though responding to proximity to something. When they finally burst through the massive doors into the council chamber, Aaliyah understood why. The circular room, with its high domed ceiling and tiered seating, was dominated by a central platform. Upon this platform stood a crystalline structure, identical in composition to the tip of her spear, but vastly larger, a towering obelisk that pulsed with the same bioluminescent energy. Around the chamber, 11 more counselors rose from their seats, their obsidian armor glinting in the obelisk's light. The one who had captured them joined their ranks, taking the 12th position in the circle. "The Council of Blades will now pass judgment," the lead counselor announced, voice echoing through the chamber. "Aaliyah Rain and Victor Thorne, you stand accused of crimes against the established order, possession of forbidden technology, and conspiracy to commit genocidal acts against our new allies." Aaliyah barely heard the charges, her attention fixed on the obelisk. Through some instinctive understanding, she knew that this was what the infiltrator had meant by the key. Not the data crystal, but this massive structure that somehow controlled or activated her mother's weapon. Victor seemed to reach the same conclusion. "The council didn't take the key," he murmured to Aaliyah. "They are the key. The infiltrators have been using them, their bodies, as incubators for whatever that thing is." The lead counselor removed their helmet, revealing a face that was only partially human. The right side appeared normal, an older woman with stern features and silver hair. But the left side had begun to transform, the skin taking on the same iridescent quality as the infiltrator they had encountered in the laboratory. "Not incubators," the counselor corrected, having heard Victor's whispered observation. "Collaborators, willing participants in the evolution of this planet, the vanguard of a new era." One by one, the other counselors removed their helmets, revealing similar partial transformations in various stages of progression. They were neither fully human nor fully alien, but something in between, the physical manifestation of their betrayal. "You've doomed your own species," Aaliyah said, disgust evident in her voice. The lead counselor smiled, the expression grotesque on her half-transformed face. "We have ensured the survival of some. The worthy will be transformed, as we have been. The rest will serve other purposes in the new ecosystem." "And my mother's seedlings?" Aaliyah demanded. "The hybrid grain?" "A clever weapon," the counselor acknowledged. "If planted and allowed to grow, the resulting crops would release compounds toxic to the transformation process. It would not kill those already changed, but it would prevent further conversion. A temporary setback at best, but annoying nonetheless." Victor's expression was grim. "So you engineered Dr. Vorn's death and set a trap for the seedling transport?" "Of course. Though we expected Core and Core to be leading the caravan, not Elise Rain's daughter." The counselor's gaze fixed on Aaliyah with unsettling intensity. "A fortunate coincidence. As it happens, we've been seeking you since your mother's death." "Why?" Aaliyah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The counselor gestured to the spear in Aaliyah's hand. "Because of that. The only successful weaponization of the alien genetic material that we've encountered. Your mother managed what our scientists thought impossible. She created a symbiotic bond that human biology could sustain without transforming. We wish to understand how, before we destroy it." As they spoke, Aaliyah became aware of a growing resonance between her spear, the data crystal in her pocket, and the obelisk at the center of the chamber. The three components were communicating somehow, building towards something, her mother's final weapon, preparing to activate. Victor must have sensed it too, because he subtly shifted his stance, preparing for whatever was about to happen. "You know," he said conversationally to the counselors, "for supposed enlightened collaborators, you've made a serious tactical error." "And what might that be?" the lead counselor asked, amused. "You've brought all 12 of yourselves into one room, alongside both components needed to activate Elisa's weapon, And then you removed your helmets. He smiled grimly. I always said you people were too fond of ceremony. Understanding dawned on the counselor's face, but too late. Aaliyah had already removed the data crystal from her pocket. It flared with blinding light as she raised it alongside her spear, both pointing toward the obelisk. The resonance between the three components reached a crescendo, and a pulse of energy erupted from the spear's tip, amplified by the crystal and focused on the obelisk. The crystalline structure absorbed the energy, then began to emit a high-frequency tone that made the partially transformed counselors cry out in pain. Their alien tissues began to crystallize, similar to what had happened to the infiltrator in the laboratory, but far more rapidly. "What have you done?" the lead counselor gasped, watching as her transformed flesh hardened and cracked. "My mother's final gift," Aaliyah replied, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "A targeted pathogen that affects only transformed tissue, leaving human cells untouched. She designed it to give humanity a fighting chance." The counselors collapsed one by one, their bodies crystallizing from the inside out. The process was horrific to witness, but Aaliyah forced herself to watch. These were the people who had betrayed humanity, who had conspired with an alien force to transform their own planet, regardless of the cost in human lives. As the last counselor fell, the obelisk at the center of the chamber began to pulse with increasing intensity. Cracks appeared in its crystalline surface, spider-webbing outward as the structure destabilized. "We need to get out of here," Victor urged, already moving toward the exit. "That thing's going to explode, and I'm guessing the blast won't be friendly to anyone with alien DNA, which technically includes you, through your spear." Aaliyah nodded, turning to follow him. But as they reached the chamber doors, she hesitated, looking back at the data crystal, still in her hand. "Wait. This contains my mother's research. Everything she knew about the aliens. The transformation process. Possibly how to create more weapons like my spear. We can't leave it." "There's no time," Victor insisted, as the obelisk's pulsing increased, the chamber beginning to shake with the building energy. "Your mother would want you to survive to carry on her work." Aaliyah made her decision. She placed the data crystal carefully in a protective pocket of her gear, then ran with Victor through the corridors of Iron Keep. Behind them, the energy buildup reached critical mass. The explosion wasn't like anything Aaliyah had experienced before, not heat or concussive force, but a wave of crystallizing energy that swept through the citadel, transforming any alien biological material it encountered. They barely reached the maintenance shaft ahead of the wave, descending as quickly as safety allowed. When they emerged at the base of the citadel, the night sky was illuminated by a brilliant blue-white glow emanating from the council chamber. Throughout Iron Keep, sounds of chaos and confusion could be heard as the partially transformed among the population succumbed to the crystallization effect. "We need to get back to the caravan," Aaliyah said, already oriented toward the southern ridge where Core, and the seedlings waited. "If this is happening everywhere, there's alien biology. The blight spores will be affected too." The seedlings just became even more important. They made their way back through the Badlands, avoiding patrols of confused and panicked Iron Keep security forces. When they reached the caravan, they found Core, and Sable waiting anxiously, the hover wagons powered up and ready for immediate departure. "We saw the light," Core said by way of greeting. "What happened in there?" Victor explained briefly, while Aaliyah reunited with Sable, the creature's sensory whiskers tickling her face in what passed for affection. "The seedlings are safe," Core assured her, relief evident in his weathered features. "But we've had reports over the comms of strange happenings all across the settlements. Crystallization events. They're calling them people. Changing." "The weapon's effect is spreading," Victor said, glancing back at the glowing citadel. "Your mother designed it to target the alien biological signature wherever it exists. Anyone partially transformed will be affected. And the blight? Aaliyah asked. Kor nodded toward his datapad. Reports coming in from agricultural stations. The spore colonies are crystallizing, becoming inert. But the effect won't last forever. We need to distribute these seedlings before the aliens adapt. Then we move now, Aaliyah decided, mounting Sable with practiced ease. The neural interface at the base of her skull hummed with renewed energy, connecting her to both the creature and, she now understood, to her spear. We make for the northern settlements first, then branch outward. As the caravan prepared to depart, Victor approached her, his expression solemn in the eerie light cast by the distant citadel. The council was just the beginning, you know. The vanguard, as the infiltrator called it. The armada is still coming. I know, Aaliyah replied, her hand tightening on her spear. But, thanks to my mother, we have a fighting chance now. The seedlings, the weapon, the knowledge in this data crystal. It's more than we had yesterday. Victor nodded, then hesitated before asking, Do you still hate me? The question caught Aaliyah off guard. After everything they'd been through, the battles, the revelations, the shared danger, her feelings toward Victor had transformed into something far more complex than simple hatred. She remembered her mother's words about him, spoken during her final days. Trust is earned through actions, not words. Watch what people do when the cost is highest. Victor had risked everything to protect her mother's work, to ensure humanity had a chance against the coming threat. He'd endured torture, isolation, and the burden of knowledge too terrible to share. And when it mattered most, he had stood beside Aaliyah, fighting with the same unwavering commitment she remembered from before the Ashen Fields. No, she answered honestly. I don't hate you anymore. That's step one, Victor said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Now let's work on respect. The words struck Aaliyah like a physical blow, so similar to what he used to say during their training sessions years ago. It was his way of pushing her further, of acknowledging progress while making it clear that the journey wasn't over. Respect, she repeated, studying his face. You taught me once that respect is earned through understanding. And sacrifice, he added quietly. Aaliyah nodded, extending her hand to him. Then we have a foundation to build on. Victor clasped her offered hand, the gesture sealing an unspoken pact between them. Whatever came next, the alien armada, the fight for survival, the rebuilding of broken trust, they would face it together. The caravan moved out under the light of the twin moons, 12 hover wagons carrying hope in the form of resilient seedlings. At the front rode Aaliyah, her bioluminescent spear strapped to her back, its crystalline tip pulsing with steady blue light. Beside her rode Victor, his cybernetic arm occasionally catching the moonlight as they navigated the barren landscape. They reached the crest of a ridge overlooking the vast expanse of desert that separated Iron Keep from the northern settlements. In the distance, the first hints of dawn tinged the horizon, Helios preparing to rise, while Demeter still hung in the sky, the binary suns that had witnessed humanity's struggle on this harsh world for generations. Do you think we can win? Aaliyah asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Against what's coming? Victor considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. I think, he said finally, that your mother didn't create weapons just to delay the inevitable. She believed in victory, even if she couldn't see the path to it clearly. And you? What do you believe? Victor turned to her, his expression resolute. I believe that understanding our enemy is half the battle. I believe that sacrifice without purpose is just waste. And I believe that you, carrying your mother's legacy, might be exactly what humanity needs to survive what's coming. Aaliyah absorbed his words, finding in them not blind optimism, but reasoned hope, the kind that acknowledged the terrible odds while refusing to be paralyzed by them. It was the same kind of hope her mother had embodied, working tirelessly on her hybrid grain, even as her body failed her. "Then we'd better make sure these seedlings reach fertile ground," she said, signaling to Core that they were ready to continue. As the caravan descended into the valley, the first ray of Helios crested the horizon, bathing the landscape in golden light. Aaliyah's spear responded to the dawn, its glow intensifying as though drawing strength from the new day. In that moment, with Victor beside her and her mother's legacy secure in both the seedlings and the data crystal, Aaliyah felt something she had not experienced since before the Ashen Fields. A sense of purpose, undiminished by doubt. A clarity of mission, unmuddied by hatred or grief. The aliens were coming, bringing transformation and destruction in their wake. But humanity would meet them with weapons born of understanding, hybrid grain that reclaimed blighted soil, crystalline technology that targeted alien biology, and knowledge passed from mother to daughter like a torch in the darkness. And if respect truly grew from understanding and sacrifice, then perhaps there was hope for more than just survival. Perhaps there was hope for redemption, for healing the fractures within the human community, just as they fought to heal their wounded planet. Aaliyah glanced at Victor, finding him already watching her with something like pride in his eyes. She nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and determination, then turned her gaze to the path ahead. The coming war would not be won in a single battle or with a single weapon. It would be won through countless small acts of courage, through knowledge hard-won and wisely applied, through alliances forged in the crucible of shared danger. It would be won by people like her mother, who fought with science and foresight, people like Core, who maintained the fragile supply lines that kept settlements alive, people like Victor, who endured unimaginable suffering yet returned to continue the fight, and people like Aaliyah herself, who carried both weapon and wisdom, hatred transformed to resolve, grief channeled into purpose. As Sable moved with confident strides down the slope, Aaliyah made a silent promise to her mother, to herself, to the future they were fighting to preserve. She would be worthy of the trust placed in her. She would honor the sacrifices made. She would face whatever came with clear eyes and unflinching determination. And perhaps, in the doing, she would discover that respect for allies, for enemies, for the complex truth of what it meant to be human in a universe filled with the alien, was not just a goal to work toward, but a weapon in itself. The most subtle and powerful weapon of all. "Ready?" Victor asked as they approached a narrow pass that would lead them toward the northern settlements. Aaliyah adjusted her grip on Sable's neural interface, feeling the creature's answering surge of readiness through their connection. Her spear pulsed once, bright and clear, as though adding its own affirmation. "Ready," she confirmed. And together, they rode into the future, uncertain, dangerous, but faced with courage and newfound understanding. Behind them, Ironkeep Citadel continued to glow with crystalline light, a beacon of warning and promise. Ahead, the vast expanse of their world awaited the seeds of resistance and renewal they carried. And somewhere beyond the sky, an armada approached, bringing war to a planet that would no longer be such easy prey. The battle for survival had only just begun. But for the first time in 3 years, Aaliyah faced it without the crushing weight of hatred in her heart, and found herself stronger for the change.